exported outside China.
It has not yet become a global health emergency.
This particular epidemic may be about to become a global epidemic.
累计死亡病例170例。
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern. We now have a name for the disease. It is COVID-19. If we don't operate with a sense of urgency, there could be a serious consequence.
Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low.
The risk level has risen from moderate to high.
I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody.
É uma questão grave, mas não podemos entrar no campo da histeria.
18日，我国首次无新增本土确诊病例。
The pandemic is accelerating.
We did not see the opportunity anymore to organize Olympic Games.
More than 100,000 people have now died as a result of the coronavirus.
In the UK, now more than 40,000 people have died.
Na nossa área, né, muita gente ficou doente, muitos amigos faleceram, infelizmente.
Good morning, church, both to you in-house and also to our online members and those who are visiting us online as well. We say welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. The coronavirus, also known as SARS-CoV-2, the vaccination, and you. That's the focus of our presentation this morning. During the past week, our country recorded the highest number of new COVID-19 cases. As well, our hospitalization numbers remain high. This, of course, is of very serious concern, as this virus, which has engulfed the world, continues to claim many lives. As we all know, millions have already died. Also, of great concern is the safety and effectiveness of the vaccines. There are so many questions, and for us, the country actually has received the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and so that is of main concern for us. It is to this end that as a church, we have undertaken to invite a medical personnel to speak to us on this virus and the vaccine, who will provide us with relevant and credible information. Our purpose is to equip you, as well as the others who have joined us online, with sufficient, expert, verifiable, and concrete information which is pertinent in your decision making, not only for yourself, but for your family and for others as well. The aim of this morning's session is to dispel the myths and conspiracy theories that are circulating mostly on the online platforms. And so we hope that the information shared and the questions that you will be allowed to ask will help you in allaying such fears that you may have. In the meantime, we continue to be vigilant in maintaining the practice of all requirements while being mindful not to drop our guards. We observe the health and safety protocols so as to protect ourselves, our families, as well as others. Facilitating this morning's session is our own brother Ian Ben. I will share with you a brief bio of Mr. Ben, Brother Ben. Ian Ben has been involved in secular and Christian education for many years and has taught in various educational institutions, both in Guyana and Antigua, at the secondary and tertiary levels. He has also held senior administrative positions at Abbott, headship of the University of the West Indies campus, Antigua, and has served on several civic committees, particularly those related to education and scholarship awards. He contributes to Christian education in the capacity of adult Sunday school teacher, a task he thoroughly enjoys and found to be enlightening, empowering with eternal value. At this time, please join me in welcoming Brother Ian Ben as he takes his position on the stage. And to share with us about the COVID-19 virus and the vaccine, and specifically, as I mentioned, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, is Dr. Courtney Lewis. I'm proud to say that Dr. Lewis hails from this community, Parham, and is no stranger to us at this church. Dr. Courtney Lewis is a graduate of the Pierce Secondary School and the Antigua State College. He completed his medical studies in Cuba before returning to complete his internship at the Mount St. John Medical Center. He has worked in both primary and secondary health care in Antigua and Barbuda and currently holds the title of Assistant Professor in the Department of Clinical Medicine, Campus Physician, as well as the Assistant Director of the Emergency Medical Training Center and Clinical Simulation Center at the American University of Antigua. He is also the CEO and Medical Director of the Dr. C. Lewis Medical Associates Medical Center in the Twist Mall, Redcliffe Street. He's also the Vice Chairman of the National Technical Working Group responsible for vaccine selection and research. And so we have it there. Dr. Lewis is a competent medical practitioner who, as we see, is qualified to speak to us this morning on this virus and the vaccine. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Courtney Lewis. While Dr. Lewis takes his seat, please take note of the following. Our in-house audience, as well as those joining online on Zoom and YouTube, you are welcome to submit your questions, which will be answered at intervals during the presentation. For those in-house, please write your questions and they will be collected by the ushers. Our Zoom audience, please feel free to submit your questions either to the host or co-host. And for those on YouTube, you send them via that platform. So please take note of such information, and I now turn over to Brother Ian Ben.
Thank you very much, Sister Caroline, and welcome, Doc. I had the privilege of listening to you maybe about 2 years ago at the Parham Primary School. That was a brilliant, enlightening, engaging presentation, and I never thought that medical talk could be enjoyable. It was. So we're happy that you're with us. Let's start right at the very beginning, and I think the primary issue that we want to deal with is, or we hope to dispel fears, to build confidence. So right off, I think I want to start by asking you, why should we take the AstraZeneca or any other vaccine for that matter?
Fair enough. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure as always to be amongst you. Why should you take a vaccine? So let's begin first by, I would like to start at least by saying what a vaccine actually is. Let's clarify that, because there's a lot of mysticism out there as to what a vaccine really is and what a vaccine is supposed to do. So contrary to popular belief, a vaccine is not a treatment. It's not like a medication. It's not a cure. All a vaccine really is a way of getting your natural God-given immunity to recognize something that you want it to see as a threat before it actually has to face that threat in real life. So try to think of a vaccine like a warning poster, okay? So imagine if you had a masked robber in the community, and you're getting word from your neighbors and your friends that somebody's breaking into homes at night, he's robbing people, he's hurting people. Now, you have no idea who this person is, and because, you know, we're such a friendly, welcoming group, if we see a stranger in the community, our first impulse is not to attack them and to unwelcome them. It is to embrace them, make them feel welcome, make them feel at home. Now, if this masked person is not known to us, we could very well invite this person into our homes, give them shelter, give them food, and then they can turn around and do us harm. So essentially what we want to do is hand out posters and pictures of this person so everyone in the community can know who the person is. So if you do come across them, you don't welcome them into your house, you don't give them food, you don't give them shelter, you just call 911 immediately, go inside your home, lock yourself in until the authorities can arrive. That's all a vaccine is, and that's all a vaccine really does. It's a way of introducing into your bodies, in a form that won't do you harm, some elements of that thing that you want it to be able to recognize as a threat. So if that threat does in fact enter your body at a later date, you are already prepared and fit to attack it and eradicate it before it can do you any harm. Okay, so that's what the vaccine is supposed to do. That's what a vaccine is supposed to be. Now, in terms of these newer vaccines that are on the market, of course, AstraZeneca being one of them, traditionally, whenever you make a vaccine, the route that we've taken for hundreds of years is you would take something of the germ or the threat, and you'd put it into a medium or a substance in which it can grow and flourish. Then you'd have to wait some months or years until it grows enough that you have a big enough sample that you can then make a vaccine with, and that usually takes a very long time. Once that is done, then you're going to experiment with that vaccine on animals first, and that also takes a number of months to years. When it is safe in animals, that is when you try to now introduce it into people, and even then, you do it in stages, what we call clinical trials. So in the stage one of those trials, what you're doing is you're taking a small group of volunteers, people who consciously agree to have this vaccine inside of them and to report to you anything that they may be feeling. And they will take that and you will record all of the findings, the good effects, the bad effects, anything at all, for about 12 to 18 months. When that is done, then you look for people who are actually the most susceptible to the illness that you're trying to fight. So in this particular forum, when you're talking about the coronavirus, we're talking about those persons that have what we call underlying causes. So if you have chronic illnesses, you're hypertensive, you're diabetic, you have thyroid issues, you have blood issues, coronavirus can do more damage inside of you than a regular person without those comorbidities. So they will test the vaccine on a group of people like that to see what the effects are in them. And in stage 3, you actually open it up to a much larger group, usually tens of thousands of people. In the Pfizer trials, which are the most famous ones everybody was reading about in recent months, there were 46,000 people in that trial. So usually it's a very, very big trial, extensive trial, in which you look again at the effects of the vaccine in terms of people who've caught the illness and have had it, have not gotten the vaccine and have caught the illness, and you compare and contrast them, okay? At the end of stage 3, if your vaccine or medication or whatever you're testing is found to be safe, it's found to work, then it becomes available to a regulation body to test and to vet and to then approve and make it available to the population. So depending on where you live in the world, it may be the European regulatory body, it may be the FDA in the western part of the world, in the Caribbean it may be CARFA, WHO, etc. Somebody vets the vaccine, deems it to be safe, and then you can give it to your population. But that's not where it ends. You still have one more trial, stage 4, where you actually monitor the people who've gotten this vaccine for a number of years, most times decades afterwards, to make sure there are no long-lasting or long-term effects that were not accounted for in the beginning. All right, so it's a very exhaustive process, a very tedious process, and a very effective one in making sure that the information that you get is accurate if you're looking at the right sources. Now, some people would say, you know, Doc, how do I know that this vaccine is safe to take? Because to me, it seems that they made this one very quick. The pandemic has been around for a year, and there are already vaccines out. How do I trust these compared to the ones that are tried and true that usually take 8 to 10 years? So I will tell you this much. There are multiple factors why they came out this quickly, and no, it's not just because they wanted to make money. Right? The first one is, usually when you're making a vaccine, you would have one company who would volunteer to go ahead and do this research and take on this effort for the next 10 to 12 years, most times at a cost deficit to themselves. Not many companies are going to do that, and not many companies are going to expend a lot of resources to do so. The difference between those illnesses and this new pandemic is that this being a pandemic, it's affecting the whole world. And everyone's economies, everyone's communities are being affected. So what we have now is, for the first time in our lifetimes that we can think of, you have the entire planet dedicated to one singular task. So now you have a lot of resources being made available, a lot of laboratories, a lot of human resources, professionals who do that kind of thing, volunteering their time. You have a lot of entities, whether private or governmental, giving whatever budgets or whatever money is necessary, whatever laboratories are necessary to get the job done. And that speeds up things by a lot. If you have all the resources, you have all the personnel, you have all the money you need, a lot can happen in a shorter time. That's one reason. Another reason is the same trials I just talked about, they normally happen in series. So you would have that culture growing period followed by the preclinicals, which are the animal trials, then stage 1, then stage 2, then stage 3, each taking years within themselves. For this new development of the vaccines, what they did is they did all those trials in parallel. So stages 1, 2, and 3 would have happened at the same time, yes, for the same period of time, but they all happen concurrently. So you don't have to wait subsequent years to get your results. So that's another reason why they happen to happen so quickly. And the last one, and the one that a lot of people don't really talk about, is because we don't use the old traditional methods to make these new vaccines. We don't need to grow and culture the coronavirus in a medium for some long period of time before we get a big enough sample. These new vaccines don't even use the whole coronavirus, so we don't need to grow it. Right? The different technologies that are used now, there are 4 main subgroups, but the 2 that I'm going to go into this morning will be the AstraZeneca's group and the Pfizer and Moderna's group. So the AstraZeneca group is called viral vectors. Scientific term, very easy to understand and explain. You all would be more familiar with a virus, dengue, no? Right? And you know dengue, you don't catch it like a cold. You have to be bitten by a mosquito that transmits it, correct? In this case, that mosquito is a vector. That mosquito is what carries the virus from one place to another. What we've done, and when I say we, I mean the scientific community, not necessarily myself, but what the scientific community has done is they've taken a virus that exists in nature that doesn't do anything to us, right? It's harmless to us. It may cause illness in maybe animals or other things, but not people. And they use that virus as a vector. So what they do, instead of taking the whole coronavirus, I guess I should actually explain to you what you should look for when you think coronavirus. Try to think of an egg. Whenever you think about a virus, think of an egg, because that's all a virus really looks like. It's a shell that has the genetic components for the virus inside of it, just like an egg would have the egg yolk inside of its shell. Now, this particular virus has a bunch of little crowns all over the outside of its shell. Now, the Latin for crown is a corona, and that's why the virus is called a coronavirus. It's a crowned virus. That's where it gets its name from. Now, those crowns, they serve two main purposes. One, they're sticky. So they're like burrs that exist in the grass. You know, when you walk through tall grass, those things that stick to your pants or your skirt bottoms, the coronavirus works just like that. It's a circular little creature with those little burrs coming out. And those burrs are the crowns. So the crowns help to make it sticky. The next thing the crown does, it acts somewhat like a straw, where it helps to take the yolk from inside the egg and pass it out the shell and into our cells once it infects us. Okay, so that's what the crowns do. Now, what they've done with these new vaccines is they've broken the crowns off of the shell and left the virus with all of its dangerous and harmful material to one side, and they've taken the crowns and they've put those into that harmless virus that I was just talking about. And what that harmless virus does, it acts like a vehicle that can carry those protein particles, those crowns, into our bloodstream. And that's what they actually inject you with. The harmless virus with just the proteins from the surface of the egg inside of it. Now, once it gets into us, our bodies will recognize that harmless virus and destroy it immediately. Once it's destroyed, then it frees up those crowns into our bloodstream, and our immune system can recognize it, tag them, destroy them, but they also remember them. So they remember what the crowns look like, they remembered how to destroy them, and they keep that memory. And then your body goes and it makes more of those types of cells that remembered how to destroy those crowns. So now the next time your body gets in touch with something that's carrying those crowns, you now have a much bigger army or a much bigger guardianship that can attack that thing once it enters you right away and hopefully prevent you from getting ill. So that's how the vaccine really works, okay? Now, I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'll let you ask another question.
Well, yeah, the thing is, you've actually answered quite a few of the questions that I'm really happy. So, repetition is good, and I guess that would serve as reinforcement.
Lovely.
By the way, those online, I see at least 47 persons on our Zoom, and I'm sure there are others on the other platform. You can start to prepare your questions, and those in the live audience, please, you're free to write a question, and Brother Roger will pick up and read for us. Now, Doc, I'm sure that people would want to be able to have their questions answered. So as we give small bites, I want you to explain for us 3 terms that are very germane to the language of coronavirus.
Okay.
The 3 terms are herd immunity. We hear that all the time. We're striving for herd immunity. What is that? The second term, you mentioned it, and you actually explained it, but a bit more precise, comorbidity. And the third is vaccine efficacy or vaccine efficiency, because some are at 95%, 60-odd%, but what does vaccine efficiency or efficacy mean? What does comorbidity mean? And what is herd immunity in simple terms?
Lovely. Okay, so you may have to remind me of those as we're going along. I might get lost. But, I'll start with herd immunity. What is herd immunity? So the first thing is all vaccination programs aim for the same thing. They all aim for herd immunity. Now, what herd immunity is in terms that we all can understand. Have any of you ever watched a National Geographic documentary? Good. Have you seen those of the African savannas where you have these lions that will go and hunt these large herbivores, whether it's wildebeest or buffalo or whatever? Whenever these large herbivores see a lion pack coming, or a pride coming towards them, you notice that they form these big circles, right? And they take the largest, strongest, healthiest members, and they put them in that circle with their horns facing outwards. Then the younger members, the weaker members, the older members will be on the inside of the circle. And it's the duty of those bigger, stronger ones to form that wall of horns and to stop the lions from getting inside the circle and doing any harm to those who may not be able to defend themselves. Now, essentially, all we're trying to do is simulate that same natural occurrence using the vaccine. What we want to do is get enough strong, healthy adults to be vaccinated against the virus, so the virus cannot be transmitted as easily throughout our communities. It can't bounce around from person to person. A virus is a creature that must live inside of another living thing. If it's just outside of us, it can't survive. So if we can find a way to stop it from getting inside of us, stop it from being in us and replicating and making more of itself, then we stop it from existing. It just goes back into dormancy, or back into being one of those viruses that we hear about but we never really see. Have any of you ever seen someone infected with measles? You have? You're fortunate. I've never seen somebody infected with measles. That is so rare. Have any of you ever seen someone with polio? Okay. There you go. So even if you have seen someone like that, it's a very rare occurrence. Can we agree on that? It's not something that you would see regularly or something that you would expect to walk into a doctor's office and hear, oh, Mr. John just came in with measles. Well, what? Where he got measles from? Right? And the reason those diseases are now either just out of our communities or exceedingly rare is because of vaccinations. Right? What we did is we used the vaccines to make ourselves that wall of horns that stops the virus from penetrating and doing harm to our communities, and we try to keep each other safe. So when we say herd immunity, that's what we mean. We want enough of us immunized that we behave like a herd and we become that wall of horns. That's essentially all it is. The next one was
comorbidity.
Comorbidity. So the term morbidity means any illness or condition that can cause you to die. So when you say comorbidity, you're talking about any particular chronic illness, something that can make you sick, something that can make you unwell, that you already have in your system besides a coronavirus infection. So if you are hypertensive or you're a diabetic, you have a chronic ailment, that's what they call a comorbidity. So they're saying if you already have a condition that your body is trying to cope with, having a coronavirus infection on top of that is going to make it even harder on your immune system to do its job. So if you do have one of these comorbidities, a vaccine is definitely going to be something of help to you, especially because it gives you that extra oomph to help your immune system to fight the coronavirus infection should you actually acquire it. And the last one, sir?
Vaccine efficacy.
Vaccine efficacy. Okay, good. So essentially, as the name suggests, is just how effective is this vaccine at preventing me from getting ill or from contracting the illness? Okay, so another big myth that's floating around out there is you only take a vaccine so that you never catch the illness. That's not what a vaccine does. That's why I wanted to clarify in the beginning, a vaccine is not a medication, it's not a cure. What a vaccine is a way of getting your natural immune system prepared and ready to fight something. So another analogy, if you'll forgive me for the analogy, but another good analogy for a vaccine is a bulletproof vest. Okay, imagine if someone is going to fire a bullet at you, somebody is going to shoot you. You can't escape it, you can't move out the way, you're going to get shot. Would you rather take that shot directly to your chest, or would you rather take that shot through a vest? That is a choice that you're asking yourself when you're asking yourself, do I want to get vaccinated? Do I want a bulletproof vest, or do I just want to face that bullet on my own? Because in both scenarios, the bullet may hit you and it may hurt. It's going to hurt. You can't avoid the hurting. However, one hit can be fatal, and the other hit can simply just sting for a little bit, and then you go home. So you have to ask yourself which one you would like. So some people say, Doc, can I get vaccinated and still catch the coronavirus? Yes, you can. You can wear a bulletproof vest and still get shot, right? Exactly. Yes, you can take a vaccine and still get the coronavirus. However, if you catch that infection it won't be like if you weren't vaccinated. Okay, what you may get are some mild symptoms, if any symptoms at all, and then you'll go home. So in terms of efficacy, we're talking about how effective is this vaccine at doing that job. Now, there are two main groups of numbers I want you all to think about. There are efficacy numbers in the clinical trials, and then there are efficacy numbers in real life in our communities. Okay, those are two different things. So I'll tell you now, in the clinical trials, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, they were found to have superior to 90% efficacies. They had 95% or 95%, meaning of the people in the trial who had the vaccine and then got a coronavirus infection, 97% of them either didn't have any symptoms at all or only had very mild ones. Okay? Whereas the clinical trial, AstraZeneca's numbers were more like somewhere between 78 and 85%. Now, why do I not want you to be alarmed by those numbers? Not only are they just clinical trial numbers and not necessarily the numbers in our sphere and community, because no clinical trials are conducted in Antigua and Barbuda. Nobody knows how coronavirus responds to Ducana and Saltfish and Antigua and Kentucky. We don't know. We have to see, right? But the next numbers I want you to think about are, what do you want to take a vaccine for? What is the purpose of a vaccine? For me, a healthcare professional, what I want a vaccine for is to make sure that even if I do get infected with this virus, it will not make me sick enough that I need to seek medical attention, that I need to be a burden on the healthcare infrastructure in the nation, that I don't need to go to an ICU, I don't need to be put on a ventilator, and I most definitely don't want to have to die. Now, when you look at the vaccines, all of the approved ones, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, when you look at all of them from those parameters, whether or not you'll get seriously ill, need an ICU, need a ventilator, or die, all of them provide 100% protection against that. That, to me, is the number that I hold on to. That is the number that I most think is relevant. I don't care if I catch the coronavirus and it hits me like a cold. It gives me a runny nose.
Can you repeat that about the 100% protection?
Sure, no worries. So there are two types of efficacies that I want you to think about. One is whether or not you'll get any infection whatsoever. The Pfizer and Moderna's in clinical trials showed about a 95 or 97%. Whereas the AstraZeneca showed about a 78 to 85% because they use two different types of technologies to be made. But the other numbers, the more important numbers to myself and to a lot of healthcare providers are, what do you really want the vaccine for? Do you want it to make sure that the coronavirus can't touch you, period? Or do you want to make sure that if you do get touched by for whatever reason, that you still will not get seriously ill, you won't need an ICU, you won't need to die, you won't need a ventilator. And all of the vaccines that were considered for approval, the AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, they all are showing 100% numbers in terms of that result. No one who's taken those vaccines and still has caught coronavirus has shown severe illness, needed hospitalization, needed ventilation, or had to die.
Okay, I think we can now break for a question from one of our Zoom or other online sources.
Okay, there are actually 3 questions. I believe that you'll be able to address at one shot. Question 1, as they speak, I believe generally has been spoken about the new strain of the COVID-19. The question is, can taking the vaccine, and I'm hoping they are referring to the AstraZeneca vaccine, now prevent one from being further affected?
Good question. So when we talk about new strains, try to think of a coronavirus in this term. A coronavirus doesn't use DNA like we do, like our cells do. It uses RNA. And all RNA really is is another genetic molecule that is not as complex as DNA. Whenever you think about DNA, think of a figure 8 or an infinity symbol, okay? And that's what we have that makes our building blocks, that makes our cells operate. Now, RNA is usually about a half of that molecule. So think of a figure 3 instead of an 8. Now, there are different types of RNA. There's one that helps DNA to make more of itself, to replicate. That's called tRNA. There's another kind of RNA called rRNA that helps your body to make proteins. And proteins are what really do most of the functions inside of our cells. The third type is called mRNA or messenger RNA. And all I want you to think about when you think of mRNA is an email. So it's like a letter in a postal service or an email. It simply takes a message from one part of the cell to another so that it can do its duties. Okay? Now, what we've done in terms of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines is that they've taken that message, that email, and they've used it against the virus. So rather than have the virus use its own message to hurt us, we're using it to protect ourselves against it. We're stealing the blueprints of how it hurts us, and we're making our bodies develop those proteins for ourselves, and then we can learn to fight and defend ourselves against those proteins. So that's why the technology is so new, and you can also do it a lot quicker than having to actually replicate all that virus we talked about doing before. Now, when you look at the vaccine from that point of view, sorry, let me. Oh dear Lord, I think I lost my track of the question.
No, the question, if taking the vaccine can prevent you from
getting the new strains.
Yes.
So when you look at the virus from the RNA perspective, because it's not as stable of a molecule as DNA is, it changes over time. Naturally, any virus that's RNA-based that's out in the environment will eventually change over time because the molecules are not as stable. Now, that change doesn't have to be severe. It can be as simple as me putting on a green shirt today or a blue shirt tomorrow. If you saw me in a different color shirt, do you still think you'd be able to recognize me? Yes? Good. So that's sometimes as subtle as the change can be. And of course, when you talk about vaccines, if the vaccine works on me today in a green shirt, it will work on me tomorrow in a blue shirt. It will work on me the next day in a red one. When we talk about significant change, which is something like the South African variant, something that's caused a lot of news reports lately, the only big difference between that strain and the one that we currently know right now is those same crowns we talked about before. They're a little more sticky. It's easier for the virus to stick to us and henceforth infect us. It's a little bit easier to do so because it's stickier. Also, the straw function of it to pass the material, that straw doesn't stay open all day. It stays open only about 20% of the time that the virus is stuck to us. Now, the new variant, the straw stays open about 20% longer than that. So it can infect you for longer, it can stick to you easier. Those are the main big differences between the strains. There's no evidence to show or to support that the strain that comes out is just going to be immune to a vaccine that you've already developed. However, some strains will change enough that the vaccine cannot do its work as effectively. And all you need to do is then take the proteins from the new strain and make a vaccine with that. So right now, there are actually clinical trials going on that are focusing solely on these new strains and seeing how that the vaccines can be adopted or adapted to fight them as well.
There was another element here.
The next question is the vaccine airborne?
Is the vaccine
airborne?
No, the vaccine is not airborne.
Oh, my apology. That's the question, so let's correct it. Is the virus airborne?
There we go. So the virus isn't technically what we call airborne, because airborne suggests that it can travel for very large distances just being in the air. What the virus actually does, it's transported by the globules or the little gobs of spit or saliva that we normally excrete whenever we exhale or we talk. So that's how the virus moves, in those little goblets of spit. So that's one of the reasons why the masks are so important, because it's not just to prevent the goblets from getting in touch with my nostrils or my mouth, it's also to make sure that if I'm speaking and releasing any, that they stay trapped in my mask and they don't get transmitted to other surfaces.
Okay. Are you ready for a third question? Or are you going to continue?
Well, I think we can take a question from the floor. Do we have a question from the live audience?
Yes, we do. Okay. If a different variant of the virus comes to Antigua, do you have to take another vaccine?
Good. That's a very good question. Excellent question. And only time will tell. Only time will tell that, because one, we don't know what other variant is going to come to Antigua and Barbuda. Another variant may come here that is still susceptible to the vaccine that we're currently taking. So even if that variant does come here, it doesn't really make much of a difference. The vaccine still gives us protection against it, as long as it still has the same proteins on its surface that would have been inside the vaccine that we would have taken. So we would still have immunity, we would still have protection against that new strain. Should a new strain come out that has completely different looking proteins, completely different looking crowns, then we may have to take another vaccine against that one.
Okay, Doc, great. There are religious and ethical issues that, that pertain to this vaccine, and I think one of the primary fears or concerns of religious folk is the fact that there is talk of aborted fetal material being used in the vaccine preparation. Is that true?
Good. So a short answer, no, it's not true. Okay, and that article got a lot of traction around the world, around the internet. A lot of people were reading it and just taking it on. But the problem with using information like that without fact-checking it is the internet is a much freer space than scientific journalism. So on the internet, anyone can just go on, type what they want, say what they want to say, and post it. It doesn't necessarily make it true. So that same article that suggested that there may have been aborted fetal tissues in the vaccine and so on and so forth, it was examined, it was investigated, and found to be categorically false. It's not true. What that person did that published it is they took excerpts or little clips out of journals and articles about aborted fetal tissue, and they inserted it into a CDC report on the coronavirus to make it look like it was one genuine document. So after that was discovered and it's been disproven, it's not true, that story kind of just went away. We haven't really heard about it anymore since. But no, it's not true.
Another fear is that the testing process, the clinical trials, have not included enough black folk. What's your...
Who said that?
It was reported, again, on online sources. These are things that people believe.
Okay.
So we like fears dispelled.
So definitely that's also not true. So the trials, all the 46,000 people in those trials that we talked about, and that's just for one of the vaccines, they weren't just 46 Caucasians. They had a mixture because you want to have a broader sample of the demographics of your population. So you're not just going to have one subgroup of your population in your trials. So that the fact that there were no black people at all looked at during those trials is not true.
Okay, before we go online again, I'm going to ask one more, so get ready for another. There are offers of vaccine reported in the local media from Russia, from Cuba, and from China. Can you dispel our fears? Can you build our confidence in the efficacy of these three vaccine candidates? Okay. Cuba, China, and Russia.
So I will say this much. Even that article, it was a little bit misconstrued. And that's another danger in when you rush to offer information but you don't take the time to clearly give it. Not all of those vaccines that you just mentioned have already achieved approvals. They're still in development. So I think what the government was trying to say when they said whatever it was that they said, I won't make any excuses for them, but whenever they said what they said, I think what they meant to say was they are already in talks with the manufacturers of all and any vaccines that have made it to the end of stage 3, because what they don't want to do is wait for them to achieve approval and then the bigger, larger markets attack them and try to buy up all of the sources. What they're trying to do is start talks with them now, so as soon as they become available, should they be made safe and should they be proven to be safe, that we have our fair shot at purchasing as much of them as we can for our own population. So far, each of the 3 that you talked about, only 2 I can actually speak to their efficacies. So the Johnson & Johnson version, the Russian version, the Sputnik 5, and not the Cuban one, the other one. The Russian, the Chinese, the Sinovac. Yes, the Sinovac vaccine and the Sputnik 5 vaccines have shown great efficacies in their clinical trials. They've shown great safety in their clinical trials. They have not been shown to provoke any severe side effects in patients who have taken them. They only give you the mild ones, and that's something else I want us to clarify here again. What are the side effects of vaccines? So they seem so far in their trials to be safe. They seem so far in their trials to be efficacious. But I don't think they've actually gotten any Western society approvals for their uses and distributions just yet. We're waiting for them to achieve those. Once they achieve them and they're proven to be safe, then we'll start saying, well, the Antiguan government can start to look into bringing those here as well. Should they actually pass all those tests and be proven to be safe, and the National Vaccine Committee says, yes, we've looked at all the data, we've looked at all the research, and we're confident that they're safe for our use, then you should have no reservations about using them. You should have no worry. They'll be okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Doc. Interestingly, I have a question here relating to one that was asked before. Is the MRC5 tissue, which is taken from a Caucasian male fetus, in the vaccine?
No. No.
Or was it tested on the fetus?
No.
So the answer is no.
No.
Okay, is there a question from our live audience? Yes, brother. There's one in Brother Rogers' hand.
Oh, something to note while they're getting that question prepared. Vaccine side effects. I want to clarify this because a lot of misconceptions are going around about them. When we talk about those vaccine side effects, especially those mild ones, I don't like the use of the term vaccine side effects, because what they really are your immune system's response to a vaccine. It's not so much that the vaccine is giving you those symptoms. That's how our bodies behave whenever something foreign is being put inside of it. So any vaccine that you take or any non-severe illness that you might catch, your body's going to respond the same way. It's going to increase its temperature to try and cook that invader. That's what we call a fever. Wherever it is that that germ or that vaccine enters the body, your body's going to send most of the protective chemicals and mediators to that site. So that's why you might get the tenderness in the zone where you got the injection. As it passes through your bloodstream and goes through your muscles have a lot of irrigation. They have a lot of vascularization, a lot of blood vessels there. So as those mediators are chasing down that particle that's traveling through your blood, it's going to get in touch with those tissues in your muscles. And those chemicals are actually very irritative. So they inflame your muscles, they irritate the muscles, and that's why you can get muscle aches or muscle pains. Now, these are not necessarily effects that the vaccine gives you directly. It's the body recognizing the vaccine and mounting a response against it. So I will say this much. Whenever I get vaccinated, for any vaccine, not just coronavirus, I look for those symptoms. I want to see them, because if I see them, I know that my immune system recognized it and is now mounting a response, and I can confidently say I am protected against that particular germ or illness. If I don't see any symptoms whatsoever when I get a vaccine, I'm usually very nervous about it, because I'm wondering, did I get any benefit? Am I protected? Is my immune system recognizing this? Because I've seen no signs of my body recognizing it. So when we say side effects, we have to be careful that we don't let people believe that it's the vaccine making us sick. It's not making you sick. It's your body recognizing it and your body doing what you wanted it to do.
Excellent. Go right ahead, Sister Carla.
Yes, interesting. So this question is from the floor. If you have contracted the virus and recovered successfully, you basically develop natural immunity, right? So
that's a good question.
Let me give it a follow-up so you could attack both. So do you think those who develop natural immunity to still get vaccinated?
Good. Beautiful question. I love it. So now it depends on, do you get natural immunity? Because this virus has only been plaguing us now for just about a year or just over a year, but there are people who have caught it twice. Which means even if it does leave you with immunity, it doesn't last very long. And there may be several reasons for that. It may simply be because your first confrontation with the virus may be with the full-on infection, in which case your body and your system is hit such a hard blow that your immune system doesn't have a chance to properly mount a response against it or build proper memory to it. So that's another reason why the vaccine is so important, because your body gets a chance to recognize the proteins, build up the immunity in a safe way, because there's actually none of the viral material inside of you that can make you sick. That's another reason why we talk about the safety of the vaccines, because historically, remember, we talked about using the whole vaccine that we grew in the culture and then injecting you with that. Now, with the coronavirus, because it's such a new virus, we don't necessarily know how it may behave inside of our bodies, whether it behaves like chicken pox and may try to stay dormant in a part of our bodies for a while and then resurface later on in life. We don't know. But these new vaccines don't use that technology. We don't inject you with the coronavirus. We inject you with either a protein piece of the crown that your body will break up right away and learn to defeat, or we inject you with the email only, the message, so that your body can make its own proteins and you can build up immunity that way. So after taking the vaccine, very shortly afterwards, there's no remnant of that vaccine left inside of you, and there's definitely none of the coronavirus inside of you that can give you later, longer-lasting side effects. So that's why they're lauded to be so safe, because we're not using the old technology anymore.
Okay, Doc. Let's talk a little bit about the local scene. In recent times, the dashboard has really been ticking over. And I think that as of yesterday, there were probably 42 persons hospitalized. How, from your medical knowledge and your knowledge of the medical system here, what is the optimal capacity you think Mount St. John could effectively handle of serious hospitalizations for COVID? There are 42 now.
Okay. So I will say this much. It's not, luckily for us, it's not so much just Mount St. John's. The government has actually put in place other facilities where persons who may have these infections or may have symptoms may be treated and may be quarantined. So it's not just Mount. We have other facilities as well that may be used. You know, they retrofitted the old Halberton to have an infectious disease ward. There are other institutions now where we can actually have quarantines, we can have isolation suites, and we can actually treat people in their homes if need be, if they're isolated enough from the general population. So I won't say there's a finite number on how many people you can have hospitalized right now. The more scary numbers would be, how many people can the ICU take?
Right.
How many chronic or severely ill people can we manage right now?
Yes.
And I think that's where the public safety number of 25 comes from. You know, they're telling you now that they don't want any groups bigger than 25 at a time.
Correct.
I think they're doing that because the healthcare system cannot manage more than 25 new severe cases at once at this moment.
But it's now 10. It's now 10.
Okay. And related, how many ventilators are available?
It's a good question. It actually changes because the government purchases some of their own, and then there are other private entities in Antigua, like NSA or different private hospitals that may have their own as well, that may not get listed under the national numbers because the government really only accounts for the ones that that it has imported. I think the last number I heard was about 24 or 25 that we have on island right now.
24, 25. Okay. Just so that we understand a little bit more clearly, because you're much closer to this thing than we would ever be. This is a bit morbid, but I think it's worth investigating or understanding.
Okay. What
is the process of suffering and then dying for the severely infected? I mean, what does that person go through?
Okay. So the COVID-19 virus, its technical scientific name is a SARS coronavirus 19, right? So any SARS virus, SARS really stands for Syncytial Acute Respiratory Distress Syndrome. So it means the virus attacks your breathing apparatus, your lungs, your diaphragm, the way that you take air in and out, and it normally produces what we call respiratory distress. So it stops you from breathing normally, or it stops you from breathing effectively. So you have swelling inside of your lungs, you have fluid building up inside of your lungs, and of course you all know fluid is not something that you want in your lungs. Otherwise we'd all be fish. We could swim around and just breathe on the water. It's not what you want to have. So with your lungs so severely affected, after a while, just like the rest of us, if we go jogging and we start jogging for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, we're going to be tired. At some point, you're just going to fall down. The same thing happens to your lungs. If your lungs are struggling to do their job for too long, they just stop working, right? And that's when, of course, we have to start mechanically helping to breathe for people. That's when we put them on the ventilator. That's when we have the machines breathe for them. But at some point, your lung tissue becomes so scarred and so damaged that it just doesn't exchange gases in and out of your body anymore. So you essentially just suffocate or drown in your bed.
Drown. So it's really like drowning.
It feels like drowning.
All right. Before we take another question, let me just ask this one quickly. I believe you have a very short answer to this.
Okay.
Is there any component of the vaccine that includes a mechanism for tracking our whereabouts?
No. No.
Great. Okay. Go ahead, Sister Carla.
Okay. There are many, many questions, Doc.
No, there's an element that all of us have in our pockets that tracks our whereabouts.
The cell phone.
Our cell phones.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right? How many of you have ever just like driven past Kentucky and then all of a sudden your phone gives you an ad for Kentucky? How did the phone know to give you an ad for Kentucky? Right? The phone actually records your whereabouts, where you're going. Actually, it does that not for a conspiracy reason, but it does that for more of a safety reason. Suppose your phone gets stolen. How do you find it? Suppose you're lost and you want to turn on your GPS and say, hey, please direct me to where I want to go. How does the phone know to tell you where to go? Because it needs to know first and foremost where it is. So the phone has an internal tracker in it. So if those big mega companies really wanted to just track our whereabouts and know where we were, they already have a system in place to do that. They don't need a vaccine to do that.
Okay, Doc, you have laid out the importance of the vaccine, but there's a question here. If the vaccine is that important, why is it that it's not recommended for children under 16, that is for the Pfizer, and for the AstraZeneca, those under 18?
Good. So it's not so much that it's just not recommended. Those are not the preferred groups. Those are not the groups that have the most importance to take it. And there's several reasons for that as well. Again, the first one is usually when you're under 16, your natural immune system is still in development. So almost everything out there is still new to it, which means it's still responding and reacting to everything. So it's almost always on guard. And because it's almost always on guard, it's usually very strong. So you usually find that people under 18 or under 16, they're not as exposed to getting a coronavirus infection or even getting seriously ill from one, because their natural immune systems are already at top alertness. Whereas for adults, our immune systems have pretty much seen it all, has been through it all, and we're on low guard until something actually happens. So that's why we're normally the ones that need to get it first. Secondly, in terms of life-threatening comorbidities, usually persons under 16, under 18 aren't the biggest group of hypertensives, diabetics, and those comorbid kind of groups.
Go ahead, one more.
Okay, there's a question relating to diabetics and those who are hypertensive. For those who are long-time sufferers, can the vaccine have a negative effect on them?
None of the research has shown that vaccine actually affects them negatively. It only really just provides benefit.
What about pregnancy?
That's a good question as well. So that's an actual really important question. And what they've actually started doing now is they've actually just started whole new clinical trials just on ladies who are actually trying to get pregnant or who are already pregnant. Now, all the ladies in those older clinical trials who've taken the vaccine way back when have still been shown to have normal pregnancies. They were still able to get pregnant normally. They were still able to deliver children normally. And those who were pregnant when they got it, even if they didn't know at the time that they were pregnant, were able to bring those children to term safely and deliver them naturally as well. So the research isn't showing that the vaccine is a danger to pregnancies. The problem is, in the scientific community, they like to speak with certainty. So until they've actually conducted trials and have hardcore data to show, they usually say, hold off on giving those people until we can show you black and white paper that says it is safe. But so far, those who have been pregnant haven't shown any negative effects to getting vaccinated.
All right, we're going to take one from the floor, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit about our local scene again. There is a registration process for people who would like to receive the vaccine. I did try it online a couple of times unsuccessfully, and I finally succeeded yesterday. I think our pastor here has been among the first recipients. Maybe you have too. What is the process, if you know, for vaccination in Antigua? For example, I guess in the U.S. they concentrated on first responders or healthcare providers, and then the folk in nursing homes, etc.
Agreed.
What is the process for Antiguans?
So the process has been guided by several factors. The first one being who's most exposed, who's most in need of getting covered, and also the amount of vaccines that have been available to us. So far, we've only had those 5,000 doses donated from the Commonwealth of Dominica. That was the first set of vaccines to actually make it here. We also have another 40,000 doses coming in from the Serum Institute. We are also supposed to be getting an additional 40,000 from the COVAX facility, which is the body put together by the WHO and the PAHO to make sure that all communities and all countries get free access to vaccines. So as of now, those other doses haven't gotten here yet. We only have the 5,000 here. So they had to make a priority list of persons who you think should get vaccinated first within that 5,000, and then you can have other people join in once the other doses arrive. So the first group of people to be considered were all frontline workers, people who have to be in front of that virus on a daily basis to help and try and keep the rest of us healthy and safe. So all of those healthcare professionals that work at the hospital or who transport coronavirus patients from one place to another, the EMS, the nurses, the lab technicians, most people that just work at Mount St. John's or in the clinics. Those would be like the front line. Then you have other professionals that help to keep us safe as well: police, military, fire, Coast Guard, those people. Then you would have airport workers, other professionals, other people that work in congregated settings, so people that work in schools, people that work in congested office buildings, especially government office buildings, what we call our essential workers, and so on and so forth. So those would be the top priority groups that would come down the chain. And then once you get more and more and more doses, then you start going to general public and general population as well.
From the floor, is there a question from the floor?
Do you have one there, or you want me to read one from here? Okay, this is a long one, so let me take my time and read it. Dr. Lois, I advise my mom to take the vaccine because people have died from COVID-19, but I have not heard of anyone dying from taking the vaccine. For someone like herself who is black and older and fears the vaccine because she believes she may die, which is not unfounded, what advice do you have for someone like that?
Fantastic.
So all the fears.
That's a great question. So I'll start by saying this. For the vaccine to kill you, or the process of vaccination to kill you. You would have to have a very, very rare underlying condition where your body just responds violently to anything foreign. So the only way this vaccine can really hurt you is not by it actually going inside of you and poisoning you. It's by it going into you and your body seeing it and just going crazy and just saying, listen, I'm attacking everything. And there are people in the world like that. They're not very common, but they do exist. Usually they would have signs of that kind of underlying trait from before. So they would be allergic to everything. No matter what they do or what they eat, they just get allergic reactions. If they go outside and they play in the grass, allergic reaction. If they eat something new, allergic reaction. They just respond very sensitively to most foreign things. If you are a person like that, then you should consult with your physician, get an understanding of your underlying condition before you try taking the vaccine. And that is fair. Somebody can have that worry, and I have no problem with you seeking medical attention before you consider taking it. That is fine. But unless you have one of those rare illnesses, or let's say you've had a serious cancer that you've been treating for a while, because most cancer treatments, they bring down the immune system. So if you've been treating yourself for cancer for quite some time, you may also need to consult with your doctor about finding out if your immune system is currently strong enough to take the vaccine. Because remember, the vaccine isn't a medication. It's not a cure. It doesn't work on its own. All it does is it helps your own immune system. So if your immune system is weak, then the vaccine won't be of much benefit to you. But to be an actual danger to you, you'd have to have a very rare underlying condition.
Okay, so it answers to cancer as well. Can the vaccine change your DNA? Or
Nope.
can it make it sterile?
No. So it won't change your DNA, because remember we talked about the different types of RNA, and the only RNA, the one that does change DNA, tRNA, is not in the vaccine. And they're not using the whole virus so that you can get some of the virus's tRNA in it. All they're using is the email, just the messenger. And the messenger cannot alter DNA. It doesn't change DNA in any way. So no, the vaccine won't change your DNA, won't turn you into a zombie. We're not going to be starting the zombie apocalypse. And there's no evidence so far to suggest that it causes infertility or sterility.
Okay, Doc, is there any, this is a little off the vaccine, but it's related to COVID.
Okay.
Could one, or is there a procedure, is there a test that would enable anyone to determine whether he or she did contract the virus and was asymptomatic?
Yes.
After the fact, you
Yes.
could discover.
Yes, there's a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So the scientific term for something that enters your body that shouldn't be there is an antigen. That's a scientific term, an antigen. So most of the rapid tests that you would have heard about would be antigen tests. And they look to see if there's any viral components or proteins currently inside of you. Then there's another kind of test called an antibody test. So antibodies are molecules that our bodies make to fight an antigen, to fight a foreign body. There are actually tests that you can do that will look to see if you in your body has an antibody present against coronavirus. So even if you didn't have symptoms, or if you caught a cold last year, September, and you thought it was just a cold, if you do an antibody test and it shows positive traces of antibodies for coronavirus, then that flu wasn't just the flu. You actually did have a coronavirus infection at some point.
Another interesting question. Is it sexually transmitted? That is the virus.
Okay.
I guess they want to know all extent.
I got you. I would say it's not classified as a sexually transmitted illness, but it would make sense for it to be. Because a viral illness that travels throughout your bloodstream will seep into your bodily fluids. If it seeps into your saliva, it can seep into your respiratory system. I don't see why it couldn't seep into other fluids, like seminal fluids, etc., etc. So I don't think it's not listed as an STD, but I think you probably could get it that way, especially if the activity includes exchange of saliva.
Is there anyone who should not at all take the vaccine?
Anyone who's proven to have bad allergic reactions whenever they take any other type of vaccine should first consult medical attention first. Anyone who's currently undergoing cancer treatments that have immunosuppressive effects, anyone who would have just recently had an organ transplant, because part of the medication management for transplanting an organ is medication that's going to suppress your immune system, because you don't want your immune system to see that new organ as an antigen and attack it. So usually for you to get a new organ, they have to bring down your immune system so your body doesn't reject it. In that case, you probably shouldn't take a vaccine in that state and either. And those are really the main groups who shouldn't take it.
All right, we're really, we've exhausted quite a lot of time. It's 4 minutes before 11, and we probably have time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. I don't know if anyone on the floor has another question. You have other pending questions?
There is a question here, Doc, because you mentioned that persons have contracted the virus more than once. Can you really fully recover from the virus? Is there such a thing?
Yes, you can really fully recover from the infection. You really can get, full just normalcy back after. Most persons after getting coronavirus infections do fully recover. The problem is, how long does the protection that you get after getting an infection last? That's the big question. And we started to answer that earlier, where for right now, you simply don't know. And this is a problem that we have with a lot of people who are giving the information to the public. You're giving information about something that is so new that when you give definitive long-term answers, it's hard to actually accept those because we don't know. So we've seen people in the year get infected twice, something that shouldn't happen if you're getting immunity from the infection itself. That's another reason why Donald Trump's idea of just let the virus spread and let everybody catch it and build their own natural immunities doesn't really work. Because if this virus is going to kill 3% of people it infects, 3% of 8 billion people is a lot of people dying. This is not a method that we want to use. And secondly, it's not proven to give you very long-lasting immunity naturally. Right? That's another thing as well in terms of taking the vaccine. People have asked me, Doc, how often am I going to have to take this vaccine? Do I take it once in my life? Do I take it like tetanus once every 10 years? Do I take it once every 3 years? Again, another question we simply can't answer. What we'd have to do is vaccinate everyone and see how long the protection actually lasts for. We may be lucky. There are other coronaviruses that we fought before, like measles. Measles is coronavirus. And you may fight a coronavirus and realize that after getting the immunity the first time, you never really need another booster shot. Maybe it's because your body gets to fight it in that safe environment where it doesn't have to actually get sick and it can build its own natural immunity easy on its own terms. I don't know if that has some benefit as opposed to fight for your life and after you're done fighting for it, maybe you're left stronger. But so far, those who have been vaccinated seem to have been protected for a little bit longer than those who just got infected. So only time will tell us.
All right, I have one more question before we probably take one more from the floor. Are there any curative medicines being worked on? We understand what the vaccine does, but in terms of medications for a cure, are there cures being worked on?
Very, very good question as well. Now, try to understand that viruses are a little bit different to bacteria or to fungi. There are no known cures for viruses. That's why even though we've had common colds for centuries, there's no cure for a common cold. Your doctor will tell you, if I give you antibiotics for this cold, it will last you a week. But if I don't give you antibiotics for the cold, it will last you a week. No matter what you do, the cold is going to run its course and then leave. There are no cures for viruses. And there's no cure or curative medicine for coronavirus. What you do have are medicines that will help you fight the symptoms that an infection gives you. So if you have a fever, you can take medication for the fever. If you have a runny nose, you will get a decongestant for your runny nose. But there's nothing to say we're going to destroy this virus and kill it.
So then, given that scenario, it is likely that we could have repeat infections, like the flu returns.
Agreed. So given that scenario, you might have repeat infections unless you have your entire community have herd immunity. And then the virus just can't spread. The reason why we keep getting the seasonal cold or the seasonal flu is because we don't have herd immunity to a seasonal cold or flu. There's no big national vaccination program against the cold because we don't consider it a life-threatening illness.
All right, can we take one more?
Sure, interesting, because this is up our lane, Doc. You know, when we get either the flu or cold, we would drink our ginger, garlic, and the likes. And so, can we, for instance, do such? Steaming is recommended. Ginger and garlic, turmeric, and vervine. What's your take on that?
Lovely. So all of those substances you just mentioned do a really good job at making your natural immune system stronger. They don't really do anything in terms of replicating numbers, but they make the existing protector cells that you have as strong as they possibly can be. Now, in terms of fighting a virus, your number one weapon is your immune system. And having a very strong immune system helps you to mount a better response, which is the whole reason behind a vaccine. All a vaccine does is your natural immune system on steroids. It makes your immune system as strong and as powerful as it can be. That's all a vaccine really does. Those natural substances you talked about, they also help your immune system to be strong, but they don't help your immune system to recognize COVID-19. So you may have COVID-19 seeping into your body, replicating, making more of itself, and getting a very strong attack force together before your body starts fighting it, as opposed to your body already having the warning poster and knowing, hey, that's not a guest, that's something I need to destroy, and going after it right away.
So in essence, there is no substitute to the vaccine?
There's no better substitute for a vaccine, no.
We're going to go back on this question as it relates to the testings, the clinical testings. You indicated that 40,000 trials were done for the Pfizer vaccine. How many were done for the AstraZeneca one?
Lovely, good question. I think, I'm not remembering the exact number, but it was still in the tens of thousands. I think it was 27 or 28,000 people. So whenever you do a stage 3 trial, it's never a small amount of people. It's always in the tens of thousands.
All right, at 11:03, I think we've done an excellent job of questions. Is there one pressing, burning final question from the floor before we allow Doc to make his final pitch to us on why we should be vaccinated? Final question, Sister Caroline?
Yes, let me ask this one. How would you describe the body's ability to deal with frequent vaccination? You mentioned that it's a possibility, should there be a new strain, that we would need to do such. What effect it would have on the body?
Okay, good. So it depends on how many vaccines you're talking about getting and in what time interval. I'll give you this example. I had to travel recently to India for work. So a work was sending me across the world to go and do training for some military and first responders in India. And India has some germs and some diseases over there that we don't really have here. So they said, Doc, if you're going to come over here and work, we want to make sure that you're not going to come here and get sick. You should probably look into getting these vaccines. And they gave me a list of them. Now, what the nurse at the AUA clinic did is she looked at the list and said, well, Doc, you can take these 3 together, and then in a matter of about a week or 2, you come back and you can get another 3. And then by then, you'll have all the ones that you need to have. So we try in the health community not to overload your system with vaccines all at once. However, there's not a pertinent danger to you getting multiple vaccines with intervals, because all you're doing is training your body to recognize something, build memory to it, and then you move on. Once your body has that knowledge, it's safe to try and learn something new and something new and something new.
Thank you very much.
Well, great. Doc, as usual, you've been brilliant, but we want you to wrap up your presentation to us by once and for all making a pitch to us as to why we should be vaccinated.
Okay, so please everyone try to remember that the purpose of the vaccine really is to create a wall of horns. What we want to do is have as many people in our community protected against this illness so that it cannot move undetected and unimpaired through our communities and hurt the people that we care about. If the population of Parham Town is only 10,000 people, If tomorrow it's 9,999, it's too small. To lose one person to this virus is too many. So what we want to do is make sure that we protect each other. You don't necessarily take a vaccine for yourself. You take a vaccine for your loved ones. You take a vaccine for your communities. You take a vaccine for your children, not just for yourself. The vaccines so far have been proven to be safe. They have been proven to work. They have been proven to keep you out of the hospital. They've been proven to stop you from dying. There are no more important factors besides those. If you still have any concerns whatsoever about taking a vaccine, please seek the information from a knowledgeable, relevant source. Have a talk with your doctor. Do what the congregation has tried to organize for you today, and have someone who knows about these things come and speak to you, and then you can make an educated decision. So far, the vaccination process is not mandatory. It is still voluntary. So it depends on all of us wanting and volunteering to protect each other to come forward. If we don't do that, what we're doing is creating a hole in that wall of horns. We're making it so that the lions can get in and they can devour our young ones, they can devour our elderly, they can devour our sick. So please think about it, ponder on it, meditate on it, and I hope to see all of you protected in the near future. Thank you for having me.
Great, 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 great. There is a formal thank you segment, but I just want to say that it was really a pleasure having this discussion with you. Like I said, I already had a prelude to what to expect maybe 2 years ago. Brilliant, simple, informative. All right. And
thank you so much.
Great. Doc, you may now have a seat in the audience. We want to conclude this segment with a spiritual input on the issue of COVID. It has caused death, it has caused disruption, it has caused a bit of confusion too, both for Christians and non-Christians. And to give us a biblical overview, a very brief biblical overview on the way forward from a biblical point of view, we're going to invite our pastor just for about 5 minutes to speak to us.
Do you still have a question for me, brethren? Yes. Let the audience hear.
Has created fear and confusion for both Christians and non-Christians. What would Jesus Christ be saying to us at a time like this?
And it is indeed a very good question. And immediately I can hear Jesus saying, "Fear not. Fear not. I am with you. I am here." Throughout the scriptures and Jesus Christ interacting with his followers from time to time, one of the things that he would normally say to them when they encounter situations and that cause them to demonstrate fear was to fear not. The case in question was his disciples when he sent them out on the boat across the other side, and they encountered some difficulties and they thought that they would die. And when they finally decided, look, let's call on Jesus, because he was asleep, and he woke up and he said to them, "Fear not, peace be still." Calm the storm. And I believe that this is what the Lord would be saying to us in this particular time, in this situation, not to fear. Trust me. I am here, look to me for whatever help you need. I am able. I can help you. I'm here for you. So fear not. All right, and in wrapping up this session today, people have had a lot to say about science and not trusting science and so forth, because the pandemic, you know, has caused quite a lot of stirring, and in order to respond to this, science has to come into full. And a lot of people have quite a lot to say, not to trust the science and things like that. Now, in the ministry of Jesus, Jesus had a scientist on his team, the 12 disciples. Jesus had a scientist, a doctor, a physician, in the person of Luke. Luke wrote the Gospel of St. Luke. He wrote the Gospel of the book of Acts. And hence we notice that Jesus Christ himself, had confidence and you know, recognized the need for such. And he is given to individuals the ability, the skills, and the knowledge to impart certain informations that can be of help to us. And so therefore, God has blessed us with physicians, with doctors, with scientists, and we have heard from one today that has given us excellent information that I believe that whatever fears that you may have are being arrested today. And just to even make it a little more forceful, I have already gotten my first job. I had my job yesterday, and are you looking at me? Right. And I must say that I felt excellent. The only little stirring I had that was the muscle thing, a little pain in the muscle. Apart from that, I have not experienced any temperature, any fever whatsoever. I still feel very good. And someone told me yesterday that they're waiting for the next 2 days. But since, you know, even in our pastoral meetings and so forth, I have indicated, because there's even some of our pastors who have indicated, you know, some negative remarks and skeptics and things like that. And I have said to them, listen, when the time comes, it's available, I am going to take it. I've heard enough, and I've read about it, and I've made my conclusions that I would feel confident enough to take the vaccine. And I want to say to all of you, those here and those online, I would say to you, take the vaccine. Take the vaccine. All right. And healthcare is something that is critical, is important to us. The Bible does not really address healthcare directly, and of course says nothing about socialized medicine or even other political issues related to modern healthcare. But what I must say to us today is that the Bible is definitely pro-health and encourages us to take care of our bodies. Our bodies are creations of God, and for the believer, temples of the Holy Spirit. 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. And again, I refer to what I mentioned earlier, Luke, who wrote over half of the New Testament, you know, was a healthcare professional. He was a physician. And Paul even advised medical treatment. 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 23. Seeking the physical well-being of others and oneself is good and proper. The Bible mentions various medical treatment, all of which are what we today would consider holistic. People applied, for instance, bandages to wounds, Isaiah 1:6, used oil and wine as topical agents, James 5:14, Luke 10:34, and used wine for stomach ailments, 1 Timothy 5:23. Now, it doesn't mean that modern surgery or pharmaceuticals are unbiblical. Only that when the Bible was written, those treatments, has not yet been invented. And there's no reason to believe that we shouldn't, use whatever methods are at our disposal to improve or correct our health. It is wise to plan for the future. Proverbs 6:6-8. And the Bible says the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. The virus, COVID-19, we need to do whatever we can to protect ourselves. The vaccine is now available to help us. And to apply what the word says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. I think an excellent illustration was given by the doctor concerning the use of a bulletproof vest. You have it, you're going to still get shot. You're going to get shot. But what do you want to do? Take it without the vest and die? The vest will protect you, will save you. And so the vaccine will help us. What are you going to do? Ignore it and die? Get pretty sick? Get on a ventilator? I would encourage us to be wise, be prudent, and take the vaccine. Take refuge. Get the help that you can. And so, understand that taking the vaccine is not unspiritual. It is only being wise. And I want to encourage us to be wise. Protect ourselves, protect our families, protect our loved ones, protect our nation. However, I want to end on this note, and I don't think I could really stand here without ending on this note, because there is a virus that is more serious than COVID-19. COVID-19 may not touch all of us. It has affected the world. It's global. It's all over the world, but not everybody will get COVID-19. But one thing we can't escape is that virus that is more deadly and dangerous than COVID-19, and that is sin. It has affected every single person born in this world, and there is only one cure. A cure that is perfect. Now, as we have heard, that the vaccine is not a cure. It will help us somehow, We'll survive a little longer. But sin kills, destroys. And there's only one cure that is perfect, and that is the blood of Jesus. The vaccine, if you want to call it that, quote unquote, is the only remedy, the only thing that can rid any individual of this deadly and dangerous virus is the blood of Jesus. And there's only one person who can administer that. Today we have several persons who are assigned to administer the vaccine. Several persons. When I went yesterday to get my shot, there were several nurses that were there administering the vaccine. Yeah. And with COVID-19, there are several vaccines that are now available. AstraZeneca, which is here. The Pfizer, Moderna, and just yesterday, last night, I was reading that the Johnson & Johnson is now being approved, and the others that are being worked on. But there's only one cure for this virus, and that is the blood of Jesus. And there's only one remedy, only one person who can administer that, one physician who is perfect, and that is Jesus Christ. No matter what we do, folks, no matter how much we run, we can't get away from it, because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But Jesus Christ has made available his blood on Calvary to cure us permanently of this disease, of this virus, which is sin. And so whereas we may escape coronavirus, you may not escape sin, because all have sinned and come short. But we thank God that there is a perfect remedy that can help each and every one, the blood of Jesus. Nevertheless, let us do our best to protect ourselves and our families as we continue to battle, as we continue to fight this virus. It'll be around for a long time, but let us do our part. Protect ourselves, protect our families, protect our loved ones. Be wise, be prudent. You've seen the danger, seek refuge. Get the help that you can. Help is available. Let's be wise. All right. Doc, we want to thank you very much for accepting the invitation to come to share with us your knowledge. And I want to say that we have all been indeed tremendously blessed. We have received help. We have gotten answers to the questions that were being asked. And if we had more time, more questions, and we believe we will be able to handle. And we want to thank you very much, for this very informative session. It was a hard task to really shift our usual regular morning service for this, but it was worth it. It was worth it, and we're happy that we did. All right, because we need this information. We need to have our people, the fears and the confusion, so many conspiracy theories. And there are those who have been even going as far as saying that the vaccine has the mark of the beast all over it. There's no such thing. That is not so. The mark of the beast will take place during the tribulation. That's when it will happen. So for those of you who believe that the mark of the vaccine is the mark of the beast, no, it is not so. It is not so. It will take place during the tribulation. The mark of the beast is a number, 666, and you receive it either in the forehead or the palm of your hands. That's where you will receive it. And think about it, receiving this, you will not be able to do. If you don't receive it, it will be forced upon you. The vaccine, as you've heard, is a choice. It's a choice. But yes, in the tribulation, you will have a choice, yes. But in some, But the fact is that it will not be easy, because except you receive this mark, you will not be able to do any kind of business. You need to be able to buy or sell, except you receive this mark. It's not so with the vaccine. So, put that one side. Right, that's not so. And the other things, conspiracy theories that they talk about with COVID-19, that when you check the Word of God, and this has created a lot of prophets. COVID-19 has birthed a lot of prophets, plenty of them. And we have seen so many of them with the videos and the clips declaring, I am prophet this. And I've heard even some medical professions, persons, they claim to be, they say, I am doctor this, I am doctor that. And so many doctors that are really have some negative things about the vaccine and encouraging people not to take it. Yeah. But choice is yours. And I would encourage you again, according to Proverbs, the prudence is danger and seek refuge. I encourage you. There's danger, COVID-19. We have heard the testimonies of persons who have had it, and there are those who right now have to learn to walk again as a result of COVID-19. So let's be wise, folks, and protect ourselves. Again, we want to say thank you, Doc, for your presence here today and for the information shared. And we can assure you that, God willing, this will not be the last that we'll have you. It may not be to speak about COVID-19. It may be some other medical issue, some other thing, but we can assure we will call upon you again, at some point in time. So thank you again today. We have a presentation. We want to show our love, our appreciation to you for coming and sharing with us today. And so we have a presentation. Dr. Ben is going to make that presentation to you on behalf of the pastor, members of the Parham Wesleyan Holiness Church.
Yes, I am very happy that you came here today. And I know Pastor gave his thank yous, but as a trainer of teachers for over 20 years, I will give you excellent grade for your presentation. You did well. You did well. From the first time I heard you at the Parham School and he made that presentation, he talked about blood is supposed to run all over your body. It's not supposed to run out. Never forgot that. And he gave us some analogies of the virus, of the vaccine, as a bulletproof vest, then a warning poster, and email message. Those things, I'm sure, will always remain in our minds. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You did well. And we just want to give you a token. This is just a token. We can't really give you all that we would like, just a token of our appreciation. We are saying to you, on behalf of the Parham Wesleyan Holiness Church, thank you.
Yes, and we will not all right, we want to say thank you to Brother Ben. You did an excellent job as well. I want to thank you very much. And